Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Diksha, and I will be your host for this event. We are excited to have you all here today to learn about Jolly Grammar. Today, the workshop will cover grammar and punctuation progression in Jolly Grammar 3, 4, and 5. Thank you so much for coming today, Sarah, to share your knowledge. So before starting this session, I'd like to share the norm of today's webinar. So the event will I'm really sorry. There was some technical issue. I'm so sorry.
Just get worried there. I thought I'd have to do my little dance.
Okay. So the event will follow same instruction as before. We'll put everyone on mute except for our speaker to avoid any disruptions. We'll disable the chat. We will disable the chat box. So please write down all your questions. And at the end, there will be 10 minutes of questionnaire session. And then we'll enable the chat for everyone. The session is being recorded as well, so we will upload to our YouTube channel. So please stay until the end. And as we know, there is a 5 minutes of assessment that must be completed in order for you to obtain your certificates for this webinar. I will now turn the rein over to you, Sarah.
Thank you very much. Nice to see everybody back again for day 2. Today we're going to look at a bit more grammar. As I say, it is progressive. The scheme is progressive, so it builds upon what the children already know. So there is an assumption that they will have done grammar 1 and 2, or at least cover the concepts in grammar 1 and 2, if they are moving on to 3, 4, and 5. Again, we will say just a little bit as we go about what to do if you're rolling the program out through the school, which is always the most difficult time when you're introducing something into a school. It's fine once you've got it going and it's all rolling and everybody knows what's going on and it's all progressing beautifully. But those first couple of years where you're trying to get something introduced, either you have to start in a particular year and it just rolls through, or if you're going to try and introduce it into the upper years as well, then you have to work out how to cope with whether the children have done these things or not. They might have done. I mean, you know, the grammar concepts are the grammar concepts. They're not just here within Jolly Grammar. They are the grammar concepts of English. So they may have been taught already. So, you know, don't panic. But as I say, we are going to revise, build, and take them forward. Because, as I say, that's always the basic tenets of our programme. And again, you've got handbooks, you've got pupil books. It's the same content. It's just provided to you in a different way. And it is entirely up to you and your situation, which is best. As you can see, there's sort of a colour. Grammar 3 has a pinky background colour. Grammar 4 has the orangey, and Grammar 5 is a blue colour. So that can help you when you're looking at the books or the handbooks. So, as I say, what should they know before we leap into Grammar 3? We're going to have a brief recap of some of the things we did yesterday and some of the things that we are going to assume the children know. So we are going to assume they know about sentences, that they can speak a sentence, that they can write a sentence. It starts with a capital letter. it finishes with a full stop, it makes sense, and to be a sentence, it must contain a verb. Otherwise, it is a phrase. Okay. We have taught them the parts of speech: pronouns, verbs, adverbs, proper and common nouns, adjectives, conjunctions, and prepositions. And we have taught them about simple tenses and that verbs happen in time and things. And they can use all that knowledge to parse a sentence. So look at the words, identify what job they're doing in that sentence, and understand what they all do, that an adjective describes a noun. We've introduced them to punctuation, which is particularly for writing, okay, and how to use speech marks and question marks and commas and things in speech. So actually, even though they've only done 2 years, that's quite a lot for them to cover. And they have done alphabetical order up to 3 letters. And quite honestly, if they can do it up to 3 letters, they can then do it up to any number that they want to once they've got that principle and idea involved. And they can efficiently use a dictionary, because if you can't efficiently use a dictionary, it's no good, because it takes far too long and nobody wants to do it, and they don't bother. So we are assuming that they know all this. As I said before, the handbooks or the teacher books, the pupil and teacher books, have very explicit instructions, break the lessons down into the constituent parts and give you, as the teacher, the information you need to know. That notebook thing at the top, again, if this gets more important actually as you go up, if you're not sure that the children have covered the work, have a look on the bottom of there. You will be able to see where it was covered before, so you can look back, you can check what they're supposed to know. That will also probably be covered in the introduction part on the teacher's notes, and if that is the case and they haven't covered it, you can teach it there, and if they have covered it, you just do it as a quick revision and think jolly good, excellent, don't need to worry about that. Okay, so there's lots of information and it's all there to read and to think about in your own time, because as I say, it's all very well me sitting here for an hour throwing all sorts of information at you, but you need to be able to process that. Being a teacher, I always understand that, you know, the beginning of the year, you need to assess your children, you need to work out what you've got, where you're going. In the grammar handbooks, the first few lessons always revise what the children should know or what you want them to know. So in Grammar 3, it starts off about using a dictionary and now for order, and then goes on to do a bit of parsing and the parts of speech. So by using these sheets, you can assess your children and check that they do know what they're supposed to. And as I say, if they don't, teach it. Okay, it's not a big problem, but if they don't, teach it. But it just gives you the opportunity to do so. I would also add the last half term of all the grammar books, all the way up, never introduces any new concepts, because there's always time slippage. There's always things that goes on in schools, in life. So those last 6 lessons will always be consolidation and going over ideas that may have been taught before or things that they should know. So there is plenty of revision and consolidation and opportunities not to get behind and to catch up within the grammar books. Okay, so as I say, if they use the first few, both the spelling and grammar as an assessment, and if they don't know it, teach it. So we looked at verbs yesterday, and I said that by the time they've done the whole course, or we look at in depth 3 types of verbs: the simple, continuous, and the perfect tenses. And we give them this tense with the grids, because as I say, it gives a nice visual for the children to hang on to. And we looked at the continuous tense yesterday. So this implies that it is ongoing, it's continuous. And we have the auxiliary verb to be and the present participle, which is made by the verb and adding the suffix ing. Okay, so participle is just a word that is made from a verb. And I say this continuous tense, so I was looking for past continuous. I am looking for present continuous. I will be looking for future continuous. And we said the shall and the will are interchangeable these days. Okay, we move on from the continuous tense to the perfect tense. Right, now in the continuous tense, as I said, participle is a word made from a verb. So the present participle we make by adding ing, and the past participle, well, this is easy because we've done it before, haven't we? It's made by adding the suffix ed, like in the simple past. So for the perfect tense, we have a different auxiliary verb. We have the verb to have. So within the program, we go over and look at all the parts of the verb to have, and we need the past participle to go with it. So for the perfect tense, the past perfect is I had looked. The present perfect is I have looked, and the future perfect is I will or I shall have looked. Okay, so it's perfect because it's perfect, it's been completed. It's not continuous and ongoing, but it's perfect and being done. So we teach all those things, and the children get a good understanding of how tenses work and the things that go on. And as I say, the past participle is usually for regular verbs made by adding the suffix ed, but unfortunately, because it's English, it can't be that simple, can it? In English, we have a lot of irregular, that's the perfect tense. I've gone a bit quick. So we go over all of those, we've looked at those. We have irregular past participles. Okay, so not all our past participles are made by adding the suffix ed. Some of them change, which is why we have things like I swim, I swam, I have swum. Okay, so we've looked at tricky pasts before. We've looked at that within grammar 1 and 2 and said some words do not make the past tense just by adding ed. So the children are aware of this. It's easier for them to then understand that the past participle is where that change, that tricky past comes in. And as I said before, we are a language, we're an amalgamation of many languages, but basically Norman, French and Anglo-Saxon. And in Anglo-Saxon, they changed the verb to show the tense, which is what you can see here. So I drink, I drank, I have drunk. I sing, I sang, I have sung. And we also things like I bit, I bite, I'll have bitten. Okay. But again, there are patterns there which we explain and show within the program, and try and help the children to make sense of where things are a bit different, or where things may confuse them when they come across them, if they're not ready for them, or if they've not been told about them. So again, sometimes it's just heading off problems that you know might come up and explaining why it is that it's I have drunk, not I have drank or I have drinked. Okay, so we explain all this and go through it with them and give them examples. As you can see, we've got our B's here as well. We teach them to look at the verbs and to understand what verbs they are. So we have these little beehives. As I say, our B's are often connected with the verbs, the doing words. And we practice this a lot. They come up on the spelling sheets because there's room there. It's something they know how to do. Children actually do quite enjoy doing things that they know how to do. And they get very good at finding the verb and then parsing it, i.e. working out what it is. So if we take we are talking, okay, so the first question they're asked is it singular or is it plural? And of course it's plural because we includes you and at least one other person. Is it the first, second, or third person? Well, it's including yourself, so they know it's a first person. Again, all this is taught in the program. Is it in the past, the present, or the future? It's in the present because we are doing it now. And is it simple or continuous? It's continuous tense because it's a present participle. It's talking that is used within it. And I say they do this a lot, at least once a week in Grammar 4. They become very good at it, but it just means they then can tell you what sort of verb it is without really even thinking about it. The spelling sheets a friend of mine puts out in the morning, and they do all these bits that they know how to do. And then she comes and they teach the spelling for that week. But these sorts of things that come up time and again, they give the children lots of practice at it. And practice really is what we learn, and it becomes automatic for children to be able to cover these things. We also look at phrasal verbs in Grammar 5 because they can confuse people. A phrasal verb is a verb and one or more other word or words. It's usually a preposition or an adverb, which together make a different verb, which has a new and different meaning. So if we look at this sentence here, the boy took his muddy boots. The boy took off his muddy boots. Okay. So in the first sentence, took is the verb, and it just means he brought them with him. He brought his muddy boots with him. In the second one, we have a phrasal verb. The boy took off his muddy boots. Okay, so he took them off his feet. So the meaning is different. But if you've got children who are perhaps looking up in a dictionary, so they're looking individual words up, they don't necessarily give them as a phrasal verb, but by alerting them to the fact that this is happening and this is here, then again, we make it easier for them and their path to learning English. Same things sometimes like with Google Translate. Again, phrasal verbs, often things they just translate each word literally. So again, you don't necessarily get the proper meaning, even using things like that. Technology is wonderful, but doesn't always do the job that you think it's doing or your confidence in it. So as I say, we look at phrasal verbs, and there are quite a lot in English, right? To get up in the morning, to get out of bed and to get dressed. He fell over. Okay, fell and fell over, similar but slight differences. To find out, to throw away, to cheer up. Again, lots of phrasal verbs like this within English. So again, we go over some of the most common of them so the children are aware of them and again know how to cope with them and can identify them if they need to. So we looked at proper nouns and common nouns. As we said, each part of speech has a colour and action. Proper nouns, black, and you touch your forehead, and it means that if it's a proper noun, it needs a capital letter. Just reinforces these concepts with the children. But in Grammar 3, we move on to things called collective nouns. Okay. So when there's a group of whatever these things are, okay, then often there's a special name for it. So is it a herd of birds, a bunch of flowers, a library of trees? Which one of these are right? Which one of these aren't right? So again, we have some of the most common ones, so the children learn them and can identify them. It's actually not a herd of birds, it's a flock of birds. Bunch of flowers is correct, and it will be a forest of trees. Obviously, it will be a library of books. But again, it's a teaching point, and again, particularly for English as a foreign language, it's developing vocabulary and comprehension that might be automatic for native English speaking children who would always say a bunch of flowers, because obviously that's what they will hear. Okay. If you've got children who are quite confident in their English, or older children, then again, it's another opportunity for a bit more creative work, because you could make up your noun collective nouns for some of these. I think some of the collective nouns that are used have been made up and are have just become because of usage. But anyway, it's a quite fun activity to do and the children to think of. So we could have a wriggle of octopuses or a cuddle of teddies, a twirl of dancers. Again, helping children think about language. A scream of monsters, a stripe of tigers, a float of balloons. And again, you know, you can get them to draw the picture, have the collective noun underneath, and it also makes a nice display in your classroom. But again, it's encouraging children to be creative and imaginative with language. As I say, if they've got the basic underlying concept and know some of the collective nouns for or certain groups of things. Okay, this is my lovely and beautiful friend Hema, and she has got her collective noun quadrant. They were making spells, and they've made up the spell using collective nouns. So again, a way of broadening what you're doing and giving a point to it. We've got a bunch of skeleton keys, a mischief of rats, a cluster of spiders, a rattle of bones, a lounge of lizards, a cloud of dust, a bowl of dragon's teeth. Okay, and it's the brew, the witch's brew, or collective noun quadrant. It's a lovely idea to use something that you're teaching. In Grammar Handbook 4, we move on to the idea of concrete and abstract nouns. Excuse me. Now, you remember when we talked about nouns to begin with, we said to children, it's probably a noun if you can take a picture of it. Okay. You can also tell them if you can put a or the in front of it, it's probably a noun. And a concrete noun, those sorts of nouns that you can take a picture of, they're things that you can see or you can experience through your senses. You can see them, you might be able to hear them or smell them, taste them or touch them. But there's something about them that's tangible. Okay, but there are other sorts of nouns, which we call abstract nouns, which are things that you can't really take a picture of, but they are still names of things. So illness. I mean, I could take a picture of an ill person, but I can't take a picture of illness as such. Time. It's something that exists. It happens, but it's not something I can take a picture of. The tide. Okay, the tide goes in and out. I can take a picture of the sea, but I can't show the tide exactly. Okay, so we talk about concrete and abstract nouns, and the children have to sort some nouns into the different types and things. So again, we're going over what they originally know, what they originally taught further down, and we are moving them on. Okay, and in further up, we talk about countable and uncountable nouns. As I said just now, if we could put an a or the in front of it, it's probably a noun. Okay, but some nouns like flour, okay, we don't say three flour like cooking flour. Some things like rice, you can't say a rice. You can say the rice. We can say some rice, but it normally has to be explained in a different way to just an a. So we talk about countable and uncountable nouns, and of course it's always a nice excuse, as I say, very good to do with quantities and things to do with cooking, to make some do some cooking or make some biscuits. So we try and explain about that sort of thing as well, as I say, starting, moving on. Okay, I've got 2 words for you here. Now, I don't know if you're reading them. I hope you are. The first one says polish. Like I polish my furniture. The bottom one says Polish. Okay. Now, how do I know the difference? Well, there's only one difference between those 2 words, isn't there? Which is the capital letter at the beginning. Now, if we think back, words that had a capital letter either came at the beginning of a sentence, which this hasn't, or they were proper nouns. And actually, Polish here, I know to pronounce it Polish because it's got the capital letter, and that tells me that it is in fact a proper adjective. Okay. So like we said, for proper nouns, it was the name of important or particular people, places, or things. And as you can see with these, they are adjectives that pertain to a particular place. So Indian, English, American. And actually they too need a capital letter. But again, we're building on the children's knowledge and adding a little bit on and explaining. And because you're adding things on to what the children already know, it makes it easier for them to learn, understand, and to remember and build that knowledge up. Very simple. You know, they pick it up very quickly because you're linking it into that whole network of knowledge that they already have and that you have already taught them. So, as I say, we use the actions and the colours and things to help the children think about words and how they're used in a sentence and things. Because if I'm training and I can see everybody, we might do some actions. I will call out some words. Again, as I say, when you do actions with a whole class, you can pick out who's with you. Who's a bit wobbly? Who hasn't got an idea? So I call out words like India. Okay, so they do this. What does that need? A capital letter. I'll call out a word like to run. So they'll run. Then I might say brush. So then I will get some of them telling me it's a thing, a noun. I will get some of them telling me it's an action, like to brush my hair. And it's quite a simple way by doing that of explaining that some words can have or can be a different part of speech. Some words are always one part of speech. Some words aren't. Sometimes they can be used in different ways. So we look at this and play about with the children. And as I say, we have this. This comes from Handbook 4, and there's a little set of activities, and I ask them for a word that can follow cottage, pumpkin, chicken, or apple. They're all noun words. I can take a picture of them, I can think about them, but actually if they're followed by the word pie, okay, cottage pie, which is a sort of mince pie with potatoes on the top, pumpkin pie, chicken pie, apple pie, suddenly those nouns have become adjectives because they're describing the pie. Okay. And again, I would ask them to think about, can they find, or can you think about, can you find a word to connect each of the 4 other words in each line? So hat, lunch, letter, ice, box. Foot, eye, moth, cannon. This one's much easier. Ball. Mushroom, carrot, tomato, oxtail, soup. Okay, so again, it's getting children to actually look at the words and think about what they're doing in the sentence, not just think, oh, right, yeah, apple, fine, yeah, noun. It is true, but that's not the job it's doing at that particular moment in time. And in Grammar 5, we use this idea and we get them, again, like we've talked about homophones with them as well on the spelling side too. So the whole thing, again, all comes together as a holistic whole. And we ask them to think about using a particular word in a particular way. So shower, okay, as a noun, he had a shower after swimming. Or as a verb, I shower every morning. Again, it's helping with comprehension, vocabulary, and understanding. The word colour, it can actually be a noun, an adjective, or a verb. Okay, so the colour is purple. They have a colour telly, so being an adjective. They colour the picture. Okay, so the world starts off as very black and white and simple, and then we move on to other things, and realize that there are lots of shades of grey and levels and understanding going on. So they have to think about using the word in a particular way in the sentence that we've told them. Okay, I've got some phrases here. A huge hairy spider, leather brown shoes, my Greek fat big wedding. Now, English native speakers would immediately look at those and say, oh, they're not right. A hairy huge spider. No, it's a huge hairy spider. Leather brown shoes. No, brown leather shoes. Because actually, in English, we have what's called an order of adjectives. Now, for native speakers, the majority of people that I talk to about this are amazed and have no idea at all that this exists. They look at me as if I'm mad, because, again, it's just something so intuitive that they don't even understand they're doing it. But there is an order in which they go in. There are always exceptions, but on a whole, okay, we start off with the determiners of the articles, then things that might be an opinion, the size and shape, the condition and age, colour and pattern, where things come from, and what they're made of. And it goes in this order. There are exceptions, as I say, which I'm not going into today, because quite honestly, we don't really have the time to do it. But sometimes for meaning particularly, then we might change the order of one or two of them. And there is another exception, again, to do with vowel sounds, which is why we have the to change some of them sometimes. But on the whole, and for the majority, they come in this order. Okay, children don't need all 7 of them. Okay, they normally only have 1, 2, or 3. But again, for non-native speakers, this is something that you have to learn until you become a good enough speaker that, again, you sort of pick up what the order is and what you do. So we teach the order of adjectives, and again, we introduced adjectives of snakes. And as you can see, we've got the snake along the top there, which is divided up with the different bits in. So again, all of these things should help the children and remind them of what they're learning and what they know and where they're going. Okay, we taught pronouns, which we said were pink, and they're small words which take the place of names. The first 3 are the singular, first person singular, the second person singular, the third person singular, and the next ones are the plural, first person plural, second person plural, third person plural. And we have used them when we conjugate verbs. But we can also have things called possessive pronouns, which go in the same sort of order. And my book, your book, his, her, its book, our book, your book, their book. So they're the possessive pronouns because they show who owns them. Okay. And as we can see, there's no apostrophe on that its, because as they say, there's that simple rule that if it's short for it is, it has the apostrophe. Nothing else does, even though it's showing possession. And also because it's showing possession, it is describing who the book belongs to. Therefore, they could also be called possessive adjectives, okay? Same thing, just described in a slightly different way, but both is correct. But again, it's adding to the children's knowledge of how things work, how the language comes together. Now, as I say, we've learned about sentences, we've learned about capital letters, full stops, and a verb. And then we come on to learn about the subject and the object of a sentence. Okay, now in a sentence, such as this one, the cat chased the mouse. Okay, we explain that the first thing they need to do is find the verb. So when they found the verb, the subject of the sentence does the verb, and we've put a box around it here. The object of a sentence is what has the verb done to it or receives the action of a verb, which in this case is a mouse. The cat is doing the chasing. The mouse is being chased. So the cat is the subject. The mouse is the object, and we've put the oval round it. So again, we teach them how to identify the subject and object of a sentence, because again, we will build on this knowledge as we go through the course. Pronouns will change depending on if they are the subject or the object of a sentence. Okay, sometimes they're the same for you, but for the others, they change. And I use this little rhyme because, again, I just find it helps both me and the children to remember. I hugged Granny because in this one, I'm the subject because I'm doing the hugging, but Granny hugged me. I've become the object because I am receiving the hug from Granny. You hugged Granny, Granny hugged you. He hugged Granny, Granny hugged him, her, it, okay? We hugged Granny, but Granny hugged us. And they hugged Granny, but Granny hugged them. But again, as I say, that's quite a neat little way of explaining it to the children. And again, nice visual for them to think of if they need to. We talk about paragraphs because obviously we have to order our writing, otherwise we've just got pages and pages and pages and pages of writing, which is very difficult to then decipher. So we talk about paragraphs and organizing your information, and then they put some headings and some ideas into the little clouds, and which comes as a plain sheet, so you can photocopy it as many times as you want, and then they write a paragraph for each of those things. If they're writing about themselves, the first paragraph is about me and my family. What do I look like? Or the people in my family, they put down some ideas of the things that they want to include. Where do you live is the next paragraph. So we teach about writing paragraphs because, again, that's a very difficult thing to explain to children and to get into their writing. So lots of practice at it, and giving them examples and thoughts and ideas will help them actually start using this within their own independent writing. Right, we had our synonyms, meaning the same or similar, but in Grammar 3 we introduced not only synonyms but antonyms. Okay. And antonym is just a big word, a posh word, meaning the opposite. So again, we'll have lots of examples of sheets where we're looking at, we've got our spiders here again, because again, that's our little sort of clue for them. So for synonyms for big, we could have huge, we could have enormous, okay? But now we're thinking of antonyms as well. So opposite. So the opposite of big might be a word like minute. Okay. So again, we're getting them to think about and to learn words and different words and more words and improve vocabulary, which is quite fun and the children enjoy. Now, also, as we go further up into Grammar 5, we have what we call our word walls or our sentence walls, which look very complicated here. But this is, to parse a sentence, to parse a simple sentence is great. So if it's just a very simple sentence like the fluffy dog barked loudly, you can just underline it or color the, highlight the words in a particular color, and it works fine. As sentences get more complex, then it's not enough to be able to just say, oh, that's a preposition, oh, that's a noun, oh, that's a conjunction. We need actually to have a more sophisticated way of being able to analyze sentences. And actually, if children go on later on to study English, either as a language or for literature, and go on to something called sentence diagramming, okay, it's a similar sort of idea, and this actually will lead them through, and they will find sentence diagram very simple if they've started and done this. And I have to say, I sometimes look at my work or other people's work and use this to work out the constitute bits, and also to make sure that I'm writing exactly what I mean, because it's very easy for me to think, oh, I know what it is, I know what I'm saying, I know what I mean. But sometimes when you're writing, it's not always clear. So I learned this actually off one of our editors in the office, and somebody explains it to you or you do it. But again, I say the same thing. If you work through the handbooks and the concepts and the ideas, it takes you through one little step at a time. And then eventually, when you get to these more difficult concepts, it's not difficult at all. Now, I'm going to simplify it for the purposes of today and just take one section, one wall. That's basically all it comes down to. As I say, we've talked about sentences. They've got to have a verb. We've taught them about the subject and the object. So if we have a sentence like this, the footballer kicked the ball, all we do is we can start putting it into our sentence diagram, into our boxes, our sentence wall. Okay, we can identify the subject because we know that's who's doing the verb. And we can identify the object because we know that's having the verb done to them. So then we can just pop those into our wall. The subject is a footballer, the verb is kicked, the object is ball. Okay, very simple. Then we've got the determiners, the that goes with the footballer and the ball. Any other word that is connected to the subject, the verb or the object goes in the box underneath. So the goes with footballer, so that goes in the box underneath. Okay, the goes with ball, goes in the box underneath. Right, what about if we've got something like this? The famous Brazilian footballer kicked the ball. Actually, again, you know the answer because I've just told it to you. The famous Brazilian footballer, it's a noun phrase, and it's all those words belong to the word footballer. So famous and Brazilian, again, to go down there, underneath the word footballer. So we've got the little noun phrase on that part, the famous Brazilian footballer. We know Brazilian's got a capital letter because it's a proper adjective. So we've got that in as well. Okay. But what if the sentence gets even more complex? Okay. So we have the famous Brazilian footballer skillfully kicked the soccer ball into the goal. Okay. We've got the word skillfully, which we know is an adverb. It's describing how he kicked it. Okay. So he kicked the what sort of ball? The soccer ball. So that goes with the word ball, the soccer ball. You've got another little noun phrase there. So where did he kick the ball? He kicked it into the goal. Okay. And we know into the goal is a prepositional phrase because it's got the preposition into at the beginning of it. And we've put the brackets around it. I've put the brackets around it there in green because that's the colour for preposition to show that's a prepositional phrase. It's headed with a preposition. Now, where will I put that in my sentence wall? Well, let's just think carefully about it. Okay, into the goal, what is it connected to? What is it describing? It's describing where the ball was kicked. Kicked is the verb, so therefore it goes with the verb and it goes in the box underneath. Okay, he skillfully kicked into the goal. Now we can further identify and look at and think about that, because now we know it's down there. We know actually that it is also an adverbial phrase because it's describing the verb. It's a little phrase, it's describing the verb. So I've now changed my brackets to orange, okay, to show that. But as you can see, this is quite an easy way to help and try and explain to children about that sort of thing. And again, because we take them through very slowly and carefully, because we explain one tiny little bit at a time and we explain the next bit. So we don't start off with a big long sentence like this, obviously. We just start off with little sentences and we explain it to them and they do it again every week, lots of examples, and they become really good at it. And a really good way of being able to identify what the little bits, what the phrases and the clauses and things in a sentence are doing and sharing. Because at the end of the day, what we hope and expect and want, okay, is that children who are taught with Jolly Grammar and do our program all the way through, okay, will spell and punctuate accurately. They will have a wider vocabulary because we're looking at lots of words, we're examining lots of words, we're doing lots of things that don't necessarily come up in other schemes that are just looking at spelling or just looking at grammar without joining it into the wider language, which means we hope they produce better, more interesting pieces of writing, which is not only a goal in itself, but as a teacher, it is so much better to be able to read interesting pieces, not 30 that are repeated the same thing, the same phrases over and over again. Because what we're trying to do is to get the children to have a clear understanding of how the language works, so they can speak and write and say exactly what it is that they mean and want. And again, I always like to end with a piece of writing from a child. This is actually, they were in year 5, so they'd be grammar 5 because they were in a school not far from here. They were doing a project about the theatre. They'd been on a theatre visit, they'd done some plays, all sorts of things, and then they wrote this poem, which I think is lovely and shows how we are getting them to think about words and to use words. There's more to a theatre than stone or bricks. It's also built of love and hope. It's built of laughs and of tears and loud booming claps and cheers. Got rhyme coming in there. Mouldy sweets lay on the floor. Exit signs mark the door. A velvet curtain rises and the tale unfolds. Eyes pop, jaws pop, drop as you take part in a fairy tale. And I think that's such a good piece of writing. But as I say, it's only so good because the teacher has been talking to them about words, about the use of words, about, you know, what makes a better word. Onomatopoeia we talk about. So eyes pop. Pop is an onomatopoeic word. It sounds like what it's meaning. We do talk about idioms as well. So things like it's raining cats and dogs. We'd go over some of the more common ones of those with the children, because again, Google Translate translates them directly, and there are lots of informal ways of describing things. So we go over lots of things, getting the children to think very carefully about the words they use, the words they're looking at, and what is going on. And that is the whole reason we're doing grammar. As I say, it's not because they need to know what a noun is per se. It's because we want them to use it within their work, within what they say, within what they write. And that is the end product. That is what we are hoping to achieve. So I'm going to stop sharing now. And I think that leaves us the 10 minutes that we have for answers. Though I do this, and I spend quite a lot of my time with grammar, I don't know everything, even now. You know, I didn't do it at university, but we do things with children, and we're all learning as we go. We're all learning as we go along. When I taught Grammar 5, I was really good at sentence walls and things. I have to say these days, I have to think a bit harder because I'm not doing it every day. It's like all things in life, okay? But it's a very brief overview and introduction to Grammars 3, 4 and 5. You've still got 6 to come. So if there is any questions, I will do my best and attempt.
Yes. So Sarah, is there any easy way to teach difference between possessive pronouns and possessive adjectives?
They're the same thing.
Okay.
So we tell them they're the same thing. It's the same name. It's a name for the same thing, because they're showing who it belongs to, which is the possessive part of it, but they're adjectives, they're determiners, they're saying they're connected to pronouns. So we're explaining that it's the same. You explain that it's the same word, but it has 2 different ways of being described, but in fact, it's exactly the same.
Okay. So so Miss Neetu wants you to explain the past perfect and present perfect once again.
Right. You really need to think of that little tense box with your 9 bits in it. And hold on a minute, let me go. If I go back to that and share my screen again, I still think this is the easiest way of doing it. Let me just get that up. The buttons to press. Right. So the next one. Right. Here we are. Right. For the perfect tense, so things have been done, you need the auxiliary verb to have, and you need the past participle. So if we start with present perfect, because that's normally the easiest one. So I had cooked dinner. No, I've done that wrong, isn't it? That's why it's I'm looking at my slide now thinking that's not right. Let's go back. Okay, let's go back to this one. Oh, where are we? I've lost everybody now. Can we see that one? Can you see that one? Right. I had looked. So we've got the past of to have, and the past participle, which were regular verbs, is made with the ed on the end. For the present, I have looked, which has the present for to have plus the past participle. And I will have looked. Again, it's got the auxiliary for the future, which is will. It has the auxiliary for perfect tense, which is to have, and the past participle, or the regular past participle, which is made by the ed. Again, it is explained very carefully within the books, and I would say that go and read those pages and look at the tense and things that we have there, and that will be a much easier way of trying to explain than me sitting here for a couple of minutes going over and saying past participle, present participle, this, it's a lot of words. But if you go and look in the handbooks, it is explained very carefully and in the teachers' pages. And again, if you go through the session of lessons, it takes you through one little step at a time.
Okay. Sarah had talked about actions for all part of speech. but till what grade it is recommended, as the sentence became complex in higher grades?
We normally use them more in the lower, obviously, so grammar 1 and 2, possibly even 3. By the time they get further up than that, they've really gone beyond actions. And again, as you say, because the grammar is getting more complex and the children are getting older, it's less appropriate. But again, you can have some fun with them calling out words, or sometimes you do see children, particularly if they're struggling more, perhaps doing some of the action, but no, it's mostly for the grammar 1 and 2, I would say. And as you go onwards, then not so many, although we do introduce a new action for abstract nouns. So we've got common nouns and abstract nouns. They go off into the air, into space, into the ether. But that's really the only other action we then introduce higher up, because the children don't really need them by then. They've got it, they understand it.
Okay.
I have a message here saying about the eyes. What are the mystery eyes? The mystery is your imagination. What are they? Get the children to draw, describe, think about. I often get asked about them. They actually came from our illustrator, Liv, who's lovely. I love her pictures, and there's always so much in them, but she always puts eyes in. There's always something hiding, but what it is, it's up to you to think about and decide.
Okay. So I don't think so. We have more questions for you. Yeah, I think that's it, Sarah.
Okay, lovely.
Yeah. So I think we will start our quiz assessment for today. But before that, I wanted to say thank you so much for a wonderful session. It was a pleasure to meet you and get so much knowledge from you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you have answered all the questions beautifully. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, good luck. I hope you enjoy using the program, and I may see or catch up with some of you again. And I am doing more for SAR, so I will definitely catch up with you. But
Yes.
nice to see you all, and see you soon.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.